Everyone, I haven't put my mic on, and I need someone to vest me with a mic. So let's take a moment. This is a perfect moment between. We've just heard from the bishops. I haven't started yet. You can yawn freely. Oh, get some oxygen in you. and I invite you to stand if you're able and take a deep breath and stretch your legs while I'm vested.
Sort of close.
Okay,
So anywhere in your neckline.
Like that. That's good.
Cut off here.
Okay, I'm on.
Line.
And you just kind of.
You can.
I'd like to clip it. Yeah. It won't be distracting.
And then this is, of course, you can take a shot.
Yeah.
Kind of someone to.
No, I'm going to ask for volunteer. Will you do this for me?
Yeah.
Here we go. Saddling up. There we go. Look okay?
You look,
Do I do
you look
that?
like Madonna.
I look like Madonna. Uh-oh. I better hold it in my hand. Okay. All right.
You want
So,
an introduction?
no. No, I'm good. All right. Hello, everyone. So, 2 verses of Amazing Grace. We're going to sing. We're going to get some oxygen into us that way. Who loves to harmonize? Yeah. Who always feels really awkward, like people will look at them like they're showing off if they harmonize? Okay. Permission to harmonize granted. Okay. We want to rock this Sheraton room. All right. So stand if you're able, and we'll sing a couple verses. Let's get some oxygen into us. We are. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Awesome. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. His grace had brought me safe this far, and grace will lead me home. Thank you, harmonizers. So please have a seat. Can you all hear me? Is this working?
Yeah.
Not really? How about that? No. But that. Oh my gosh, I'm so deeply happy to be here with you all. Although it is a little odd, I think other than Jerry, who's been helping me with the tech, and maybe some of the people that are serving us, I may be the only lay person in this room. Is that true?
No.
Oh, a couple? Hello. So it does feel like a bit of a reversal having me standing up here and all the clergy are seating. You know, it's kind of like a back. So I think I've had this dream before. So I want to ask you, I want to start tonight by asking you something. Has this ever happened to you? It's Sunday, you're on the altar, and you're in the zone. You're preaching about something that's really important, like God's unconditional love. Or you're standing in front of your congregation at announcement time, and you're talking about a really important chance to serve their poorest and neediest neighbors. And as you look down into the upturned faces of your brothers and sisters in Christ, there's not that much going on out there. You can't see very much. You know, do you know what I mean? It's sort of like a glazed look. You know, it's polite. I mean, these are Episcopalians after all, right? But it's sort of like the Episcopal screensaver. Do you know that look? I used to dread that look. I still get it all the time, but I don't dread it anymore because I've got a secret now. I've learned something about all those lay people out there. And I'm here tonight to share that secret with you. Think of me as an ambassador from the laity, letting you in on a secret. And my hope is that when you go home to your congregations on Sunday, that you might look at us a little differently. But like all the important things I learned in my life, I first had to get it very, very wrong. Okay? It's 2002. Grace Church. My husband, Michael, is the new rector there. This is our first real congregation. And I am a woman on fire. I have such a beautiful vision for what our church is going to look like. And it looks like this. Michael gives the most inspiring sermon every Sunday. We gather together at the table and feed together. We're dismissed out the door into the community where we fan out and serve our brothers and sisters all through my tiny little town of Bath. And every member of our church is so kind, so loving, so much the face of Jesus that everyone in Bath thinks, maybe there's something to Jesus. Maybe he is loving. Maybe he's not that judgmental jerk I'm always hearing about on talk radio. Maybe there's something in Jesus for me. It's a little idealistic, I know. Wait till you hear about coffee hour. Hold on. Coffee hour. That was going to be my favorite time of the week. We weren't going to have superficial chit-chat in my church. We were going to get right down to the deep theological truths of our lives. Okay, you can see where I'm going with this, right? And look, if you'd been, looking at Abby, if you'd been there in 2002 to warn me and say, Darreby, this isn't going to be working, I wouldn't have listened to you. Do you know why? Because I had such great ideas about how I was going to make it happen. Like the lobster CSA. I loved this idea. Community-supported agriculture, you know, where you get the farmer the funds in the spring and then you get your fruits and vegetables all summer with lobstermen. We had a couple of fisher people in our community who were really living on the edge. And I thought, this is great. You know, connect with the community, help a couple people on the edge, get some fresh lobster, you know, win, win, win. 4 people signed up. It completely fizzled. And I don't think it really helped anybody. But, you know, I kept experimenting. Second experiment. I still really think this was a great idea. Oh, well. The Grace Church Top Reads Library. Each one of you brings in your favorite book and you write down, you know, in the front piece, why you loved it. And then we check out books and we read each other's favorites. And then coffee hour, we'll talk about them and we'll have some real conversations. Who here would have brought in their favorite book? Who thinks that's a good idea? Yeah, you like that, don't you? I thought so. Well, anyone raising your hand? I know you think you would have brought in your book. I've seen those hands before. Out of a congregation of 175, maybe 10 of us brought them in. And nobody much read any of them except for one person, me. But Christmas was the worst. It was always the pits for me. Here I am, a minister's wife. Christmas was the pits because there would be, you know how it is on Christmas Eve when it's the candlelight and you're all feeling, you know, peace on earth, goodwill toward men, and anything is possible. And I would stand up in front of the congregation and I'd say, guys, you know, this is sort of a Charles Dickens moment, right? It's Christmas time. Let's go and visit people at Winship Green. We're talking the old, the sick, the lonely. I'd be thinking it's only, you know, 20 minutes. It's always the same people who go there. A couple members of the choir and my family. And my kids can tell you that as everyone else took a right out of the Grace Church parking lot and went home to their roast goose and their cozy hearths, their mom was taking a left out to Winship Green with a heart not full of goodwill toward men. No, it was full of icy judgment. I was so frustrated, so discouraged by what I saw as the inertia of my congregation, an unwillingness to try new things. And I would stand up in front of them again and again, this woman on fire, trying to find an answering spark in their eyes, again and again and again. I've got to imagine that some of this might feel familiar to you as deacons. Someone joked that we could call this conference, instead of calling the beloved people to action, someone said, let's just tell it what it, dragging the beloved people to action. Does it ever feel like that? No. And you work with people and in your ministries who really could use our help. And sometimes you really feel like your words are falling on stony ground. And if anything, as we were talking about tonight, the stakes are getting higher. You know, the world is changing. Gone are the days we could stay in our little God boxes with the staples on them, and people would come and find us. You know, we're told now we need to get out and go where people are, because you might have noticed that's where they are, out there, not in church. And I'm also, like our bishops, I'm so excited by this opportunity. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, but it's scary. One of the things that excites me is we have this kind of a rock star presiding bishop who is so inspiring and engaging. And he's telling me that he wants me to join a movement, the Jesus movement. Okay, I don't know about you. I've never been asked to join any movement. Okay, I grew up, I lived in the 60s, but I grew up in a place that was so white, so clueless, so segregated, and so reactionary. We didn't have the 60s, you know, we just had two 50s and then went straight to the 70s, you know, that kind of place. So when somebody calls me to join a movement, I'm in. A movement with Jesus at the middle of it, I'm in. But we're supposed to be bringing all these people with us, leaders. We're supposed to be bringing all these people behind us, out from our pews and into the world. And at least where I live, a lot of us are really old. And where I live, there aren't that many of us. And you know what? A lot of us are really tired. And you know what? A lot of us are really scared of change. So what's our poor church going to do? I was hoping you had the idea. I don't know what we're going to do. Maybe Melanie is going to tell us what to do. I know all the bishops are always getting, what are we going to do? They get the question all the time. I don't know, but I do have a piece of hope for you all, for the church. And for me, what was funny about it is I didn't find that hope in church. I found it in my living room. 10 years ago, I was knee-deep in another experiment. You can tell I like to experiment on people. This time, I had called a bunch of friends together, 7 of my friends. Half of them were from church and half of them were just from town. 7 average women and me. And we were going to have a goals group. This was the idea. Everyone was going to bring a goal, something that we really wanted to get done, but weren't able to do on our own, and give us some support and some accountability so that we could get them done. I thought it was a great idea. And I'd read a book about it, and I promised brownies, and they showed up. God bless them. Every one of them came. And the goals they brought were goals that you would sort of assume for people who look like me at my age. A couple of us absolutely wanted to lose weight. Somebody said, I've got to do something about my attic. It's a disaster. Someone else said, every time I open that closet and I see my guitar, this jolt of guilt goes through me. And I either have to learn how to play that thing or give it to someone who will do something good with it. Those kind of goals. So we talked together and we bonded a little bit. We shared our stories. But it was the second night that something started to change. The second night, before we could choose our final goal to work on, this book had said, ask yourself a couple of questions. And the questions were these kind of questions. What would you do if someone gave you 5 lives to live over again? What would you do with them and why? They were things like, what regret do you not want to take to your grave? Big, scary questions, right? One of my favorites is, if you had 5 minutes and had the attention of everyone in the world, what message would you have for them? Well, we loved these questions. We dug right into them. We prayed about them. We wrote about them. We talked to each other about them. And most importantly, we listened deeply. As we all struggled, we listened deeply to each other's answers. And something happened. We gave each other permission to dream big. And so our goals got bigger. Deb decided her dream had always been to get up in church and speak her truth about Eve. Yeah, okay. Did you just say yeah? Okay, you're right here. Amen. She really felt, I don't know if this is what you were yesing, Eve got thrown under the bus. Okay, I've got a nodding here. Totally under the bus, right? And that original sin chalked up to Eve, not fair. Deb was on fire with getting up and saying this in church. We had Kim, who was desperate to help some kids in her son's class who she knew was going to bed hungry every night. And she suspected in our little town of Bath that hunger was actually a hidden problem, that it was a lot more common than anybody knew. Janice decided that she had a book in her. She'd always kind of wondered, and she looked at us and said, what do you think? Do you think I should try this? And what was so wonderful is I got to watch over the next few months as these women, these 7 average women, just like me, started a mobile food truck, wrote her book, got the courage to stand up in church and talk about Eve. Nobody lost any weight. Then nobody cared. Our attics were messy. It didn't matter because we were coming alive into our gifts. One day we were sitting there. One of the things we do in our teams is we support each other. And Deb's coming to tell her truth about Eve, and she's really nervous. And so we are all sitting in the front pew and, not giving the Episcopal screensaver, like really looking at her so she's feeling good and supported. And as she's starting to really get going, she's hesitant, but then she gets going. That's when I saw it. The spark. Because Deb, you see, had been one of those people who was really quiet. Excuse me. When I got up in front of everybody, not responsive to me. And there she was, glowing. And then a couple months later, I got to see that spark again because Kim was at the mobile food truck. And I went to visit her down there, and she was unloading potatoes and handing them to a teenage dad she worked with, and they were laughing. They were laughing, polite company, they were laughing so much. And I was looking at her face, and I saw that spark. And I thought, you know what? There's the face of Jesus out in our community, giving Jesus a good name. It's what I'd always dreamed. And then God really knocked my socks off. A couple of years later, this is my 4th team, and a teammate, Linda, had made a ministry out of actually something very difficult that had happened to her family. Her grandson was born with a very rare muscular disorder. And her mission had become to be a support person for all the families who were going through this. And she was telling her choir director about this, and they were talking about how God can bring wonderful things even out of rotten things. We're having this great conversation. And do you know where we were standing? Coffee hour. Coffee hour. Watching these women was like watching kindling take fire. Where before I'd seen uninspired looking people who weren't following my vision coming alive into their own vision. Where before I felt like I was pulling people to follow my voice, my ministry, my call, I now got to watch people listen for and discern and follow God's call for them. That's the power of discernment. I didn't know that's what it was at the time when we were experimenting around my living room table, but that's what it was. And I went back to the congregation and I thought, what if everybody got that? What if everyone had a chance to ask these deep questions and wrestle with the answers? What if everyone was given permission to dream big, to name their gifts, to be supported as they developed fledgling ministries, and then have a cheering team for them to help them when they got discouraged, to hold them accountable when they wanted to run away? You know, people to fall in love with their ministries as much as they did. What if every single person in church had that? What would they look like? What would our church look like? In the 9 years that I've been leading my discernment ministry, which I call Wayfinders, God has given me amazing glimpses of what that church could look like. It looks like Lisa, who's a gifted and hilarious massage therapist who has made it her mission to get the power of healing touch to people that a lot of the world would say are untouchable, the mentally ill. Last week, she got her 501c3 status, and she has started the Healing Tribe. What a wonderful, wonderful mission. It looks like David. A lot of people come to Wayfinders when they're at those crossroads moments in their lives, you know, and are really open for discernment. And he came when he was on the verge of retiring, and it panicked him. He wasn't sure what he was going to do with his time. But his team helped him discern some of his gifts. And what they saw was that he had a boat, a love of the ocean. He knew how to pull lobster pots. And he really missed mentoring kids from when his kids were little. So do you know what his ministry is? It's taking city kids in Bath, kids who never have a chance to go out on the ocean. And he takes them lobstering with him. You know, he has an ocean ministry, a beauty ministry. He shows these kids a part of the world, a part of God's creation that they never could have seen on their own. And they live in Maine, you know, and they hear about the ocean all the time. The church looks like Brianna. I wish she were standing here right next to me. You would totally love Brianna. Brianna's a teenager I work with. I work with a group of teenage girls every year at the local high school. Brianna had seen some, what we call in Maine, wicked, awful bullying, really terrible. And she came to Wayfinders and she said, you know what, guys? You know what I want to do? I want there to be just one day when everyone in Bath comes downtown and does kind deeds for each other. Kindness Day Bath is now in its 6th year. And our town founders have just completely appropriated it and said, oh, this is our new identity. We're the kindness city in Maine. And the spark that started in Brianna spread. You should see people coming downtown. Everything's free. Everyone's invited. You're invited. Next year, it's Saturday, August 17th. It's so much fun. It's just neighbors loving on neighbors. You can come and you can have your portrait painted by a child. It's really fun. And the church looks like Lucille. I love Lucille. I have a bond with her because she's also a clergy spouse. And she's a little older than I am. She's given 75 years of really loving, generous service to the church. And what she discerned was that God wasn't done with her yet. She had another gift to give. She had the gift of humor, and she had impishness, and she was a little dramatic. And for the first time in her life, she was going to go on stage. This is what the church could look like. I've seen God's outrageous inventiveness. God has given us such a beautiful, complex world to love. And he's given us such wonderful and diverse gifts to love it with. I mean, think of this room right here, right? I mean, you're just looking at our outer wrappings, but think of what we look like inside. We're glowing. We're so gifted. Even those of us who, just look average. So I love what Annie Lamott says. You know Annie Lamott? Yeah. Of course you know Annie Lamott. You're deacons. Is she a deacon? She should be, don't you think? Yeah. A writing ministry. She says, sometimes heaven is just a new pair of glasses. So I've been wearing those glasses for a long time now. And I can tell you that God has planted a spark in every person. In every person. And my mission has become to get as much kindling as possible to people. And you deacons, that's why I'm so excited to be here and so grateful to be asked. You guys, more than anybody else, you were hearing it tonight, you have armloads of kindling. First, you've done this. You've gone through discernment, right? You've wrestled with these questions. You have prayed about it, and you've discerned some gifts, and you've gotten other people to look at you and help discern your gifts. And you've come together and done something pretty hard, which is to do all the steps and get your collar on and get out and love the world, right? What a wonderful role model you are for the rest of us laity. You were laity once, right? A lay person. And it's not like every lay person has to be a deacon, but what an inspiration to watch you in your ministry and see how you're connecting your deep gladness with the world's deep hunger. But leave that aside for a sec, the role model thing, because the real reason you're going to love this is because it is so much something that will set your deaconly little heart on fire. And that is to find the people who are, and these are your people, folks, the least of us, the people who think they don't have any power, the people who feel like God would never love them and that they've been left behind. To look at them with the glasses of love and giftedness and see the spark that God has put in every person and embolden them and help them come alive into their gifts. There is nothing more exciting than empowering the people of God to live into God's vision for them. So tonight, I want to talk about a couple of kinds of kindling that you can get back to the folks in your congregation. And I've tried to put enough papers on the table in front of you. And if anyone doesn't have one, please help each other. They're enough for everybody, but I might not have distributed them well. What you've got right there is sort of a little crib sheet. Because one of the things I want to do tonight is have you think a little bit about your own discernment, your own gifts, your own ministry. So it's not like you have to fill it out right now, but if, as I'm speaking, anything sort of just you sort of trip something up there and you think, oh yeah, that's me, make a note of it. We'll come back to it later. When Melanie and I are going to lead a session tomorrow on storytelling, and this can sort of be a cheat sheet for you. So bring it with you when you come tomorrow. So here we go. Kindling. Okay, I don't know if you can see this, but this is actual Georgia fatwood right here. The first kind of kindling, naming someone's gifts, right? You guys did that. Your gifts are named. They're here. They're wonderful. Right now, think of your own gifts, your own particular diaconal ministry, how you might capture the essence of it in a few words. You know, you might want to think about a role that you play typically. Are you an advocate? Do you see yourself as a justice bringer? Do you see yourself as a listener, a companion, someone to be with? Do you see yourself as a discerner? Do we have any other people who are just crazy about discernment? Oh, hello. Will you tell me your name? Maureen. Maureen, I'm writing you down right now. Oh my gosh, that's so great. You got to talk. So there you go. And are you a deacon by any chance?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so there you go. We'll be talking. So anyway, think about your own and try to sum it up in a couple of words. Maybe there's a gift you always bring, your compassion, your humor, your deep listening. And then you might want to include if there's a particular group of people that you serve, you know, the homeless or the addicted or teen mothers, and come up with a description for yourself. I've given you a place to play with it on your paper. It's that little box right there. Take a moment and just write down a couple of words that might describe your ministry. For instance, if I were going to describe mine, I would say kindler, discerner. Just a couple words is fine. And I'm actually super curious because I'm doing all the talking. I would just like to hear about some of the ministries that people have here. So can I, Sudi, you're on your feet. Can I grab you? Would you be willing to be a runner?
Sure.
You don't have to run too fast. Would you just take this to each table and just offer it to one person at the table who's willing to tell us what they see their ministry as? Yeah. Thank you.
This table?
Any table. We're going to go to all tables.
This table? What's the question? Share your ministry. What's your ministry?
What your ministry is.
Say who you are too and where you're from.
Christine Castles from the Diocese of Rhode Island.
Thank you.
I work with Dorcas International, which is a group that when people get a voucher to come over and be part of this country, it helps them transition. So our parish works to do 4 drives a year to get clothing, personal items, furniture, so that when people come here, they can set up a home.
Wow. Thank you. And thank you for going first.
Anybody want to have a chance at this table?
No? Okay.
Okay.
Well, I did it a little differently. I just put myself down as an encourager.
Encourager.
And my ministry is among the marginalized in a big city.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also encouraging other deacons or people that think they might be called to this crazy thing called a deacon and encourage them on the way.
Encourage them. Thank you. Yeah. So if you all need some encouragement, this is your woman right here.
This is really helpful. I think one of the things that I do is help the people in our Jubilee cluster realize what their ministries are and reach out, because there are people who are involved in many, many ministries.
Mm-hmm.
I think my own is really systemic change through Vermont Interfaith Action, which is part of the national systemic change, faith-based systemic change movement, so that we're going upstream to find what the problems are.
You're a change agent.
A change agent,
Yeah.
yes. And I was thinking, we as deacons do so many things that sometimes
Hard
hard-
to capture
it's hard to
it.
capture
It's hard
that
to
thing
capture
that
it.
is the crystallized ministry.
Thanks for trying.
But also, I think
Yeah.
also the systemic systems of the church and being a diaconal presence in
Mhm.
that change as well.
Mhm.
That was Stan Baker from Vermont.
Thank you, Stan.
all of you now.
Thank you. I'm Grace Winsky. I'm from the Diocese of Rhode Island, and my main ministry is having all people realize that they are the image of God, and everybody they talk to is the image of God, and that we're all marked as Christ's own forever, and that each person needs to realize what their ministry is, and being assigned to a church is just one person at a time, just realizing that.
Wow. Thank you. Come on, Mainers. Come through. Oh, wait, you've got someone back here. Choose her. Choose her. Yeah. They can double dip. It's fine. The Mainers are sort of being quiet over there.
My name is Beatrice. I'm a deacon at in the Diocese of Western Massachusetts. I serve at All Saints Church in Worcester. My ministry is to work with the elderly, the sick, and the weak. So that's where I feel I'm called to be serving. And I enjoy sitting with the sick or weak people, just to touch them, just to be there. And mainly, I volunteer with the hospice. So being there to see someone finishing their journey, it's my call.
Thank you. Are you all getting a sense of the different gifts in this room? Do you see what I mean now? How we're glowing?
Pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing. Abby.
Yeah.
From the Diocese of Maine.
Well, thank you for introducing me, Sudi. My name is Abby, and within my hospital ministry as chaplain in Rockport, Maine, I'm trying to create a shift, and this fabulous conversation is deepening my inspiration. But I do some of my spiritual care companioning on the inpatient psychiatric and addictions unit at the hospital where I serve. And God has been sharing with me lately, and I've listened to a lot of Bishop Curry's sermons too, at the suggestion of our bishop, Steve Lane. But anyway, so I struggled and I'll just be brief, but for such a while to kind of create a church service on this inpatient psychiatric and addictions unit called PARC. And lately I've been just approaching the patients and the staff and doing a lot of deep listening. And they are creating church. The people coming together, sharing their ideas, sharing their passions, sharing their frustrations. And we're just trying out different ways.
Yeah. Some of those holy experiments that we were talking about
Holy
before.
experiments, instead
Yeah.
of me coming in saying, oh,
Right.
this is the way we're going to do it.
Right.
I don't know why it took me quite many years here to try this, but that's okay. And it's riskier, but it's holy ground.
It's holy ground.
So that's my experiment lately.
Abby, I didn't know that about you. Thank you. I'm so glad to know that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Liz Good from Eastern Massachusetts. The bulk of my ministry is actually carried out in my paid job, and I work with helping homeless people get into permanent subsidized supportive housing, and I provide case management. And the majority of the people I work with are women who are experiencing mental illness. And for whatever reason, I seem to work well with that particular group of people. And there's only a couple of people I work with who know that I have any kind of church involvement at all, but it's bringing it regardless of how you call it. that part doesn't matter. But I'm comfortable working with the people I work with.
Anybody?
Hey, I'm Ron Steed from the Episcopal Church in Connecticut.
Yay! Wait. Why is Connecticut getting all the love?
Because we have so much to share. So I'm a transformer. Somebody asked me once, what do deacons do? And I kind of quipped that I try to make Christians out of Episcopalians. And so what I mean by that, it's pretentious, but what I try to do is to get powerful people to sit with the weak and to discover that the person they think they're there to save is actually the one that's doing the saving. And that can be incredibly transformational. And as a hobby, I help to run a homeless shelter too.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the Great Diocese of Connecticut?
It's like the party diocese back there.
Oh, go ahead, Bonnie.
I'm Bonnie Matthews. I'm from the Episcopal Church in Connecticut.
That's it. We're all moving to Connecticut.
Yes, trained in Eastern Massachusetts. Formed, or finalized formed. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. I think that a gift that I have is to listen. But I think that I also like to juggle and have many things up in the air at one time. And I'm venturing a guess that that's not a unique gift to me only. And I've used those gifts with working with one church and then two churches to have a foot care clinic in Hartford. And it has grown from two churches to working with the city of Hartford and 501 3Cs. I always want to say C3s, to provide boots for the homeless during the winter. And we no longer have deaneries in the Episcopal Church in Connecticut. We have regions. And I've also helped to coordinate the North Central and the Northeast region to participate in the boot clinics. And last year we provided healthcare, personal care items. And this year we listened and we heard that the folks who came to us needed gloves. So we're going to provide gloves at our boot party that we're having in December. And we had about 50 churches represented in giving and working and listening.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I'm just, I'm scratching the rest of what I was going to tell you. This is too wonderful. I mean, I'll get back to some of it.
So, hi, my name's Ed Dean. I'm from the Diocese of Rhode Island. I was born in Connecticut, though. So, formed in Massachusetts. And so that's isn't that about the same? I understand what you were talking about with deacons can get their hands into so many different things, and it seems that way, especially in my life that I've seen it go along. But there are two areas in particular that I've found great satisfaction in, as of late. One is I'm part of an interfaith clergy group that meets in Cranston, and we advocate for different legislative initiatives. The last one we did this past year was some gun control measures that were passed in Rhode Island. And I think one of the gifts that I was able to bring to the group was the fact that I had 22 years in the service. So when I could sit in front of the speaker, and when he's saying to me, do you really know what about this type of gun? Well, yes, I do, because I've fired them and I know what they're like and I know what they can do and I know what they were made for. So it's something that we're continuing. We're looking at legislation again for this coming year to see where we can advocate, where we can get in there and speak. And the other thing that has really touched me is within the parish that I'm in is trying to encourage folks to get out of the pews and get out of those doors. And a recent success was Church Beyond the Walls, where we're actually going opposite months, so where we send a crew down, and it's a street church, a feeding ministry in downtown Providence, and we've got a crew that's embraced it, and they've taken it as their own, and they're going out and they're doing this, with little or no encouragement now from me, and that's given me grace. So I think getting folks out of the wall and letting politicians know that they don't know everything.
Wow. Well, thank you. I hope you are getting a sense of the incredible diversity in this room. And aren't you inspired by hearing other people's gifts? It's so inspiring for me. So my question to you guys is, when you go back to your congregations, what kind of gifts might they have? There, that'll be easier. How many of you wouldn't have considered being a deacon until somebody suggested it to you? Anybody? It wasn't your idea? Maybe the person in this room? So you bishops, how many of you wouldn't have considered being a bishop unless someone had suggested it? Was this your idea, Steve?
No.
Yeah, right. So.
I went to Credo. It was a big mistake.
Yeah, but your mistake is our diocese's gain.
Wasn't a mistake.
I know. And I loved it when you were naming the love and the gifts that our bishops had before. And did you notice how Nick kind of got all bashful looking and happy? I mean, having fun, your gifts named out loud is a powerful thing. But what I meant before was sometimes it's easier to see other people's gifts than your own, right? And so often we're suggested for things. I want to tell you a story about this. I had a wayfinder. Her name was Jackie, a friend of mine, a photographer. She had been horribly sexually abused as a very young child. And she had a passion for the cause of anti-human trafficking. But she didn't have a college degree. She wasn't particularly eloquent. She didn't have any big connections. And she thought, what possible use can I be? Everything changed for her when her teammates looked at her and said, you know what? That sense of justice that you have, and I'm hearing that tonight from a lot of you, that sense of justice is a gift from God. And your photography skills are a gift from God, just like the fact you've worked with guns, right? It gives you a particular experience you can bring. Her photography skills, and the fact that her husband, Pete, was a pilot for Delta Airlines, and they could fly around the world for free. Whoa. Some gifts are material, right? Money by itself, but as fertilizer for things that are helping God and God's people, amazing. Well, she flew to Calcutta. Somehow we got her there. Pete got her there in the plane, and we sort of encouraged her, and she figured out what she was going to do, and she got to meet some girls who had been rescued from brothels. And she took their pictures, and she talked to them, and she brought their stories home, and she shared them with her team. And then she shared them with another group of people, a little bigger, and then another. And now Jackie travels all over the country from podium to podium. This is someone who lives 5 doors away from me, okay? Talking about human trafficking and teaching people, training them to recognize it in their own communities. Because as you know, this isn't just some other country's problem, right? It's around us, it's everywhere. It's probably here in Framingham. Now, during that whole venture, not one person asked her, did you go to college? Nobody cared. Sometimes it takes other people recognizing our gifts. And that's why I want to ask you, when you go back to your congregations, to keep those glasses of giftedness on and look for people who may not even realize what they have are gifts at all. So often, the only discernment that we lay people get in church is discernment for gifts that serve the church the way it is right now. You know, lay reading and altar guild and singing in the choir, all beautiful, beautiful gifts of service. Leading a vestry, you know, that's a lot of work and a lot of service. But those are gifts for the church the way it is now. We have to bring it to life, gifts for the church that we don't even know what it's going to look like yet. We need everybody's gifts. So how can we hold those up? How can we figure them out? And, you know, I have to say, this takes some trust for the church at large and letting go. I want to challenge the church. Can we be the kind of church that feels it's a ministry to get out on the ocean and show kids, you know, that God's creation is beautiful? It's not a churchy ministry. Is it a ministry? You know, is it a ministry to get up in front of people on stage and make sad people forget their troubles for an hour and give them joy? You know, I think so. Could the church accept that? I want to challenge the church to think about that. Be a gift discerner in your ministry. I know you're already doing, it sounds like 700,000 other things, but this is the thing. It's fun. It's fun to get the glasses on and open your eyes and see what you see. So naming someone's gifts, super powerful. Here's another kind of kindling. Here's gifts, right? Here's another kind. The power of a great question. I'm hoping in your diaconal discernment, you got a couple of really great questions. You know, questions that go a little deeper, that get you to open up and give room for God to get your attention, not just things that are, you know, half a second and you're done. I mean, think of the difference between these two questions. When were you born? No, scratch that. Where were you born? And if you had 5 lives, how would you live them? Okay, in the count of 3, everyone say what city you were born in. 1, 2, 3. Done. We don't even go back to that. But if I had you guys talking about what 5 lives you'd like to live, oh my gosh, this room would light up like a firecracker, and you would be thinking and discerning and listening to each other's answers in a whole different way. So the power of a great question. We have to get some great questions in front of our congregations. I'd like to invite you to be a little bold. Does it feel sometimes like if you talk about your gifts that it's, you know, bragging or arrogant? Did you grow up in the kind of family that's like, who do you think you are? You know, you don't talk like that. But, you know, as you said, Melanie, it's a disturbance of deacons. You know, you're used to pushing the boundaries a little bit. I invite your boldness. I want you to be able to name your gifts out loud. So I'm going to ask you to write down a couple of words, put them right on your name tag, so that when you see each other during this conference, think of the great conversations that that's going to spark. It's my fantasy cocktail party, right? When you're trying to think of what to say, someone's actually put some, you know, cue cards here, and you've got stuff to talk about. Think of the things that we were just hearing about. Let's get those conversations going, and let's ask each other really wonderful questions like, tell me more about being in the service. What did you see there? How did it affect you? And how does it give you the courage to go up in front of politicians and name your truth? Those kind of questions. The power of a great question. How can we bring great questions back to our congregations? I don't know. Help me think of it. I know it works. And finally, and I think, is it Bonnie way back there who talked about being a listener? Okay, so you know, it's Bonnie, right? You know that listeners, more than anyone, have the power to change the world, right? Deep listening. Have any of you in your ministries been there at that moment where you were really deeply listening to somebody and something changed? Why is that true? Why is that true? I don't have a good answer. I'm not a good listener. I'm a good talker. And what happens is can anyone explain it? What does listening do?
So I'm Jan Grinnell from Rhode Island, and my ministry is campus ministry. And yesterday several of us were leading a workshop on spiritual activism. And we started with having people identify a time when they felt invisible or hurt or oppressed or whatever. And there were about 50 kids there. And we asked them to take 5 minutes and tell that story to the other person. And then we asked for feedback. And the one girl raised her hand and she gave the feedback of this. This wasn't a professional listener who was listening to her, okay? We did about a 30-second, when you listen, don't interrupt, et cetera, try to stay focused, don't get ahead of your, that kind of thing. And she said, I never knew that I could tell my story and I feel so free now.
I want to talk more to you about that. So the power of deep listening. I watch listening. Oh, hello. You're going to have something so much more relevant and interesting than I'm going to say. No, I will.
So I am a professional listener. When I'm not in the church, I'm a psychotherapist and I work with young adults on the autism spectrum and families and so forth and so on. And I have two imaginary signs over my office door. One is, don't fix it. And the other is, shut up and listen. And I imagine those signs over the door. And the reason for that is if I fix something for a client, then it's my fix and it's not theirs. And if I talk all the time, I'm never going to hear the deeper truth. And I really believe that God is in my silence, inviting them to tell me their truth and arrive at their own solution. So for me, that's where the God spark is in listening.
Thank you for describing it so beautifully. Are you running or are you talking?
I'm happy to run.
I'll talk too, but back there. About Bonnie was going to talk about it.
Oh, Bonnie, I think. My exercise.
I think that listening empowers the person who's speaking and gives them courage and gives them meaning and allows them to express themselves more and to find themselves more.
I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the person feels valued, that you have listened to them, that you have given them that time. And I think that's part of it, is the sense of feeling valued.
That was Ellen from Connecticut.
Stephanie, I have to speak to
Stephanie from Maine. I just wanted to tell a story about not listening and the power of that. When I was doing spiritual direction years ago, a number of women seemed to be all in kind of at the same period of time, were talking to me about difficulties in their marriage. And most of them expressing the opinion that they were probably at the end of their marriages. And every one of them said some version of, he doesn't listen to me. I'm invisible to him. And I think that's what not listening, the power of not listening.
What a great counter example, right? I just have to ask quickly, who has already put in a 9-to-5 job today? Okay, so for your sake, yeah, I'm gonna end with a story and then a vision. The story is about the power of listening to change a life that I saw. Kim, the person who started the mobile food truck. The hero of that story is actually Abby, because when Kim came to our discernment group, she wanted to be an elementary school teacher. She thought getting her teaching certificate would be the next reasonable step. And she talked about it with this sort of tone of voice. But during a break, she and Abby were just chatting. And during the break, that's when Kim said, I am so worried about my son's friend, Sean. I don't think he's getting enough food. And her body changed and her intensity changed, and there were tears in her eyes. And Abby looked at her and listened to her with her whole body and her whole heart and said, Kim, I think your goal needs to change. I think you've got a passion for this. You need to do something about it. And if Abby hadn't been there for that 3-minute listening session, if you ever wonder if all the listening you all do for all the people you love makes a difference, if she hadn't heard her then, Bath would have a pretty good elementary school teacher. Bath wouldn't have an extraordinary advocate for the hungry. And Maine wouldn't either. So the power of listening to change a life is big. So these 3 things, I want to encourage you in just small, simple ways to bring back to your congregation. Something they all have in common, they don't cost anything. Naming someone's gifts, asking great questions, and then listening deeply. And they don't take any special training, Anyone can do them. It just takes attention and care and love. So I'll tell you, how could you do this in a tiny way? What can I send you back to your congregation that you could actually do on Sunday? So I'll tell you what I tell my wayfinders. Start small and grab a buddy. Okay, the small part is one person. Pray for someone. And you don't know who they are yet. That's okay. Have you ever prayed for people you don't know at all? Sure, don't even know who they're going to be. Pray for that person, and God is going to get them ready. Because in your congregation, you have a Lucille, you have a David, you have a Kim who is just waiting to have someone. How amazing if someone in a collar named one of their gifts. So try it, wait for that person. And when you think you might see something, something you notice about someone, just try naming it. Watch the power of that. It can be very simple. It could be, when the kids come in the congregation, your face just lights up. You really love children, don't you? Or I notice when you walk your mom in, she's so old and she needs such care. You are such a careful and loving son. It doesn't matter. Name a gift, a real gift, a genuine gift. It's like a little breadcrumb. And then stand back and watch what the Holy Spirit does with it. We don't know where it's going to go. But try that once. And then maybe one more time. Put those glasses on and look for people's gifts, the way that people looked for your gifts when you were discerning. And you might start to feel like, oh, there's a spark here. Someone wants to talk to me about something. Take the next step. Ask them out to coffee. It's just coffee. And, if they're nervous because their deacon is asking them out to coffee, say, you're not in trouble. Not in trouble. I just want to get to know you better. Have them share part of their story, and then maybe share part of your story. And if you feel comfortable, share some of your doubts and your missteps. We need relatable heroes, we laity. We need to know you guys aren't perfect. I'm married to a minister, so I already knew that. But we need relatable heroes. And the teenagers I work with, they know more about me than my brothers do. They know that I fainted dead to the floor during my first 2 job interviews after college. I mean, literally fainted. And I still got the job. That shows you how desperate they were. They know that I have a serious addiction to blizzards at Dairy Queen twice a week. And they also know that I battle selfishness every single day. And I tell them those things so they know you don't have to be perfect to do good things. You don't even have to be perfect to do great things, So we need our relatable heroes. Share some of your journey if you feel comfortable with it. And the other thing is, grab a buddy. I'm going to be grabbing you, Maureen, right? Yeah, so I want to talk to you because she's really interested in discernment. Would you be willing to talk to other people here this weekend about it?
I do live in Oregon.
That's right. And wait, where's everyone clapping for Oregon? Come on. There, we're all clapping for you. Maybe an electronic buddy. But find someone who's interested in discernment. Maybe it's another deacon, a colleague, or your rector, or your commission on ministry, or your bishop. And help empower the laity to grow into and bring their own ministries to life. I think this is where the future of the church is going. Tonight, I'm talking about discernment. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the other part, the hard part, the getting up and going out and serving the world that's hungry for your gifts. Because as you know, it's not enough just to hear God's call. You have to get up and go. But if we can do that for each other, if we could look at each other with the glasses of giftedness, if we can empower each other's ministry and see that we're all ministers in some way, then we'll all be out there in the world loving it. Laity, clergy, every child of God. And then we won't have to figure out the future of the church because we'll just look around us and we'll see it. Thank you.